Travis Pastrana has one of, if not the most diverse portfolio in the history of motorsports. He first catapulted onto the international scene at the age of 14 when he won the inaugural 1998 World Freestyle Motocross Championship, which he followed up by winning the X Games Freestyle Motocross gold medal in each of the next 3 consecutive years. From there, he continued to push the sport forward as a whole, pioneering the double backflip and Rodeo 720, and all the while still winning medals in multiple categories. In 2006, he became the 3rd ever athlete to win 3 gold medals at a single X Games event, winning motocross best trick, freestyle motocross, and even rally car racing, where his time edged out rally racing legend Colin McRae by less than a second after McRae flipped his car coming to the finish. But that was just the beginning of his rally racing success, as he went on to win 4 consecutive Rally America championships from 2006 to 2009, and another X Games gold medal in 2008. In fact, Pastrana has so much success in so many other forms of motorsports, extreme sports, and business ventures that what I've covered thus far is only the tip of the iceberg, and it would probably take multiple hour-long documentaries to cover his entire story properly. As for the focus of this video, it is his career in NASCAR, which many have labeled as a lackluster or disappointing one. Coming off gold medals in both X Games Freestyle Motocross and Speed and Style in 2010, Pastrana made his NASCAR debut with Michael Waltrip racing in the 2011 Toyota All-Star Showdown at Irwindale Speedway. In what turned out to be the final NASCAR-sanctioned running of that race, Pastrana competed against a stacked 40-car field that was made up of some of the best ARCA, K&N Pro Series, and NASCAR International Series drivers of the time. And after qualifying 20th, he showed immediate promise, improving throughout the long 225-lap race, and avoiding the many crashes to finish a very impressive 6th place. In his next few K&N Pro Series races, he wasn't quite able to back that up and only mustered a best points-paying finish of 22nd in the K&N E-Series race in New Hampshire. But in his defense, he did qualify and run inside the top 10 at Phoenix up until a crash in the final laps, and the smallest field size in any of his 4 races was 36 cars. Additionally, the caliber of competition in those races were far ahead of today's ARCA East and West Series, as for example in the Iowa East and West combination race that year, current Cup Series drivers including Cup champions Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney, as well as Daniel Suarez, Alex Bowman, and Corey LaJoie all finished outside the top 10. Regardless, later in the year, Pastrana merged ownership with the former Diamond Waltrip Racing Nationwide Series team and planned on running 7 races in the team's 99 car. Albeit extremely rushed, Pastrana had at least demonstrated he could put together full races, and simply by showing up, he brought lots of sponsorship to the team and even new exposure to NASCAR. But unfortunately, right before his scheduled Nationwide Series debut at IRP, Travis got injured at the X Games. In the best trick competition, he was attempting his infamous Rodeo 720, but after a fail on his first attempt, which already looked scary enough, he nearly mirrored the crash on his second attempt, except he landed even harder on his right leg, breaking his right foot and ankle. The injury took Pastrana out of all NASCAR competition for the remainder of the season, but compared to some of his other injuries, it wasn't all that bad, and he was back behind the wheel in time for the start of the K&N Pro Series East season. Immediately in 2012, Pastrana showed improvement from his rookie year, finishing a new best of 12th in the season opener at Bristol, and then qualifying inside the top 5 in both of his next 2 races. In the latter at Richmond, he ran inside the top 10 all race, but while battling for 6th place with 23 laps to go, the 4 of Brian Ortiz pushed up into him and turned him around. After that, Pastrana was only able to get up to 23rd, but despite the frustration from that race, the next race out at Iowa Speedway, he not only showed improvement on his average running position, but kept in it until the finish to cross the line in 4th place. That run, which was both his first top 5 and top 10, proved again that Pastrana was able to hang with the best of the development drivers. And although he was unable to improve on that result, he got much more consistent in the K&N East Series, bringing home 3 top 10s in a row at one point. In the meantime, Travis had begun to compete in the Nationwide Series as well, beginning with his debut back at Richmond, in which he finished a solid 22nd place, right behind the other famous series regular, Danica Patrick. But to think that he could have been competitive in Nationwide this early into his NASCAR career was a bit ridiculous. Sure, his racing record at the time was one of the best ever, but the racing he was used to didn't correlate to NASCAR in the same way that even IndyCar and F1 do. Still, in his 9 Nationwide Series races for RAB Racing, he logged 3 top 20 finishes with the best of 13th coming at Indianapolis, and he stayed out of trouble for the most part. He was only involved in a few incidents all season, with 2 spins at Charlotte and a hard crash in New Hampshire, which was due to a flat tire. His only other incident was the most disappointing of them all, as at Atlanta he ran in the top 10 for most of the race, but while in 9th place with 33 to go, he cut another tire and made hard contact with the wall, relegating him to a 26th place finish. In his final nationwide start of 2012 at Richmond, Pastrana hopped ship from Toyota and RAB Racing to take over the historic Roush number 60. Already having experience there from the spring, he qualified a new best of 5th place, and while he did run inside the top 10 for the first half of the race, he wasn't able to maintain that speed in the second half and drifted back to finish in 17th. So clearly, Pastrana had shown potential, but in no way was he prepared for full-time Nationwide Series racing after just 1 true year of experience, and a part-time one at that. But nevertheless, Roush Fenway Racing was willing to take a big risk on the Rally Racing champion, and despite even a big lack of sponsorship, they signed up Pastrana full-time for the 2013 season. And in the season opener at Daytona, which was also Pastrana's first superspeedway race, he performed surprisingly well. Though he was overshadowed in qualifying by his pole-winning teammate of Trevor Bayne, Travis timed in 4th quickest and stayed out of trouble all race long, before working his way back up into the top 10 in the final laps. With 5 to go, his progress was nearly wiped away as right in front of him, Austin Dillon came down into Michael Annett and caused the first big one of the race. But missing the crash by mere inches, he continued on with a great track position and a fast car that could very well contend for the win. Restarting with 2 to go, however, his inexperience showed as he fell back in the order and struggled to tandem draft, and coming to the white flag, it was clear that he wasn't going to win unless something extraordinary happened. And something extraordinary did happen, with a now infamous final lap crash in which the 32 of Kyle Larson crashed hard into the catch fence and tore part of it down. But unfortunately for Pastrana, he was caught up in the melee as well and spun across the line to finish in 10th place. Still, with a 10th place finish after all the carnage that day and in his first superspeedway start on top of that, it was a solid start to Pastrana's rookie season. He carried that momentum well into his next superspeedway race at Talladega, where he picked up his first career pole position, and with his teammate of Bayne lining up right behind him in 3rd, the duo tandem drafted out to a big lead in the early laps. But on lap 5, when Bayne began to overheat from the constant pushing, the drivers had to swap positions and in the process killed all of their momentum. Eventually, both of them worked their way back to the front and continued to run inside the top 10 for most of the race. But then on lap 72, a tandem draft gone wrong between Brian Scott and Reed Sorensen sent the 43 into the wall, and in an attempt to avoid them, Pastrana wound up driving out of his way to crash right into them. At least in the time between those 2 races, Travis had some other good finishes, most impressively at Las Vegas, where he ran well all day long and came home in 10th place. A few weeks after that at Richmond, he improved his best finish to 9th place, but there, after running around 20th for most of the race, he capitalized on a free pass with around 50 laps remaining and came down pit road to get tires. Then, with none of the leaders wanting to give up track position to pit, Travis was able to fly up to the front. Later that season at Road America, which was Pastrana's first NASCAR road course race, he was also flirting with a top 10 finish. With the track clearly playing into his rally racing experience, he reached as high as 8th place with 11 to go. But when a caution came out, he didn't get any word of it from his crew and continued on at full speed right into the back of Trevor Bayne. Thankfully, the impact was all just above his radiator and he was able to continue on with the repairs, but he ultimately only recovered to finish in 16th. As for the rest of Pastrana's rookie season, there really were no other highlights other than a few more top 5 qualifying runs and a whole lot of crashes. While he only had 6 crash-related DNFs, which is not too remarkable on its own, a lot of them were his own fault, and he was involved in quite a few other non-terminal spins and incidents. And that's only talking about the races, as at Indianapolis, the site of his 4th and final top 10 finish that season, he had to start in a backup car after crashing hard in qualifying. In comparison to his only full-time teammate Trevor Bayne, who recorded 1 win, 7 top 5s, and 21 top 10s, Pastrana's stats look even worse. But to his credit there, Bayne was already a Daytona 500 champion and had about 3 full seasons worth of Nationwide Series experience. A more fair comparison would have been to the part-time drivers of the Roush number 16 car, Ryan Reed and Chris Buescher. Both drivers were making their first nationwide series starts that year, and between Buescher's 7 races and Reed's 6, they combined for just 3 top 10 finishes, with Buescher scoring 2 and Reed scoring 1 respectively. But even worse for Pastrana's case is that he really didn't show a lot of potential, as in an average race he ran around 15th to 20th place, sometimes even worse, and he was never remotely in contention for any wins outside of the superspeedways. Overall, his season was one of underperformance, and that was made clear in the final standings where he came in 14th, 1 spot behind Mike Bliss, who drove for the underfunded TriStar Motorsports team, and 1 spot ahead of Richard Petty Motorsports' Michael Annett, who missed 8 races due to injury. In hindsight, Pastrana was rushed to the Nationwide Series way too fast, as his off-road and motorsports background didn't correlate to NASCAR too well, and he simply was not a quick learner when it came to NASCAR. So with his lack of success, a surprising lack of sponsorship, and a desire to spend more time with his family, Pastrana opted to pull the plug and return to his bread and butter of off-road racing in 2014. But he didn't step away from NASCAR entirely either. In the years that followed, he made sporadic starts in the Truck Series, usually at Las Vegas, where he ran middle of the pack and recorded the best post-retirement finish of 16th in 2015. Or that was until 2023, over 2 years removed from his last NASCAR start, when out of nowhere he announced that he would be driving both the Truck Series Daytona race and the Daytona 500. This double-duty effort, thanks to sponsorship from Black Rifle Coffee, was a huge shock to fans, and although many, including myself, were excited to see him back in the sport, expectations were pretty low. But with good equipment behind him from Nice Motorsports in the truck race and 2311 racing in the Daytona 500, he put together arguably the most impressive weekend of his NASCAR career. Starting in the truck race, Pastrana simply stayed out of trouble and even ran up front for a while before the race was shortened due to rain, and he was credited with a 13th place finish. It wasn't a bad start at all, but that and the 500 were 2 different beasts. Already, Pastrana had succeeded in simply qualifying in on speed for the Great American Race, because as an open car, he could have very well failed to qualify. Then in the race, he did exactly what he needed to as one of the most inexperienced drivers in the field, hanging in the back and avoiding incidents for the first 2 stages, and then making a charge up through the pack as the laps were winding down. After just narrowly avoiding disaster during the first overtime restart, Pastrana lined up for the next one in 12th place, tucked right behind his teammate Bubba Wallace, and with a rock-solid TRD engine under his hood. Though he likely wasn't going to contend for the win, he certainly had a shot at getting a huge upset top 10 or even top 5 finish.
Bell in Toyota, Logano and Ford in row 2, Chevys in row 3, Allmendinger and Busch. Here we go. One more try at overtime.
Is off ahead slightly. Just staying with that 22.
I don't like his bottom line already. Look how far off A.J. Allmendinger is off of Bell. That's not good for those guys. Bowman on the outside getting a big push by Bubba. That's where all this energy is going to come from back here. The move's going to be made on the front, but it's going to be because of what they see in the rearview mirror. Here comes the 8. These guys are in trouble on the bottom. Here comes Bubba. Here comes a little bit of help, but they're going to need more than this, just those 2.
Bowman drops to the inside. His teammate Kyle Larson is the first car on the inside.
Now that energy's all broke up now. Now we're going to see the cars coming from behind.
Where's he going to go? They're both going to get to him pretty hard, pretty quick.
All right, Stenhouse gets the white flag. The next flag ends it. 3 wide.
Well, good. You got the help.
Larson tried to go to the middle. Oh, he got turned.
Larson Pastrana in the fence. We are still green. No, the caution is out.
After getting a bad bump from Eric Almirola, Travis lost control of his car and ignited one last crash in that wreck-filled Daytona 500, getting spun around himself in the process. But thanks to pure survival that day, he was able to fire back up and cross the line in 11th place, completing all the laps and bringing home a much better finish than anyone could have predicted. Since that race, Pastrana has not returned to NASCAR in any capacity, and there's a good chance he won't ever return. But I would sure like to see him come back for a one-off truck race or something of the sort. But now it's time to answer the question of the video, was Travis Pastrana really that bad at NASCAR? Well, for the most part, yes. Given his high achievements in other forms of motorsports, he did have higher expectations coming in than your standard rookie driver, regardless of how well his previous success correlated to stock car racing. I think his situation was pretty similar to Ricky Carmichael, who I also made a video on a while back, but at the end of the day, Pastrana had enough time in NASCAR to show any untapped potential if he had any, and after a partial season in 2012 and a full season in 2013, it was evident that he wasn't going to become any superstar anytime soon. And because of that, I think he made the right decision to return to other forms of motorsports that he was already successful in. But that's all for today's video, so if you did enjoy it, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like these. I've been way more busy than ever with school recently, so apologies again for the lack of uploads. I'm almost at the end of my semester right now. I can see the light, so I'll be able to have a lot more time this summer to make more videos, which I am very much looking forward to. I also decided to not continue on with the weekly crash analysis series, as it didn't seem like that many of you guys were interested in it, and it still took quite a bit of time to edit, which was just taking away from my regular content in my opinion. So hopefully I'll be able to get back into a normal upload schedule soon, but until then, thanks again for watching, and peace out.